Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Celtic View Podcast, your home of all things Celtic, and once again we've got plenty to discuss on this week's episode. There was no action for the first team or the B team this weekend, with it being the international break, but there was a big game for the women in the Glasgow derby on Monday night, and we're going to get right in amongst that. We also have a snippet of our exclusive interview with none other than Victor Wanyama, with the full episode of that podcast coming out on Thursday evening. So definitely stay tuned for that and keep up to date with us so you can catch that full interview when it comes out. And myself and Paul, we're going to have a go at picking our international 11s, which we've been going over and over during the office. Paul, how are you?
Very good, yes. Yeah. Glad that the football's coming back this weekend, but looking forward to that.
Yes, definitely. Only one place to start, as we mentioned, Paul. It was Monday night for the women's team. A 1-1 draw against Rangers in a very dramatic ending to the match, both from what happened on the pitch and the scenes afterwards as well. Let's start off talking about the football. It was a 99th minute equaliser from Caitlin Hayes for Celtic to grab a point in the game. Just first of all, what were your overall opinions and reactions to the match?
I mean, I think it was the classic game of two halves. I think Fran Alonso said after the game that Rangers were the better team in the first half. They got a slightly fortuitous goal. It was just, a slight defensive mistake, and it was basically a tap in on the line for the Rangers player. But they were probably the better team in the first half. I thought in the second half we absolutely dominated the game. There was very few chances that we allowed Rangers, but it just looked as if the game was slipping away from us. But to get that late goal, Caitlin Hayes had moved up front. I thought she was absolutely outstanding throughout the game, defensively, bring the ball forward, her distribution, but then just to pop up with a goal. And we've obviously had her on the podcast before, we've interviewed her on the Celtic View. She's a massive Celtic fan, so she knows all about that fixture. She knows what it's like to score in that fixture. So it was great to see her score. And I think that point keeps us, we're still a wee bit off Glasgow City, but still keeps us within touching distance. We're obviously looking for favours now elsewhere, but it was no more than we deserved, and certainly I thought the way that the team came out in the second half and responded and took the game to the opposition, I thought was exceptional.
It definitely was no more than we deserved, because I think in the first half as well we had massive claims for a penalty turned down, which in my opinion, it seems like in yours, definitely should have been a penalty for us. And it's a massive point, literally the last kick of the game. The emotion of that, it kind of feels like a victory. But if we were to have lost that game, it would have made our chances of challenging for the title very slim, and also then just to challenge for that second spot to get into the Champions League slim as well. So that's a massive, massive goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think they know it's difficult. The only thing is we've obviously got to play Glasgow City twice. We have to play Rangers again. Glasgow City have to play Rangers twice. So you would expect between those games anyway, never mind the fact that we've got to play, Hearts and Hibs as well. And I think it's Partick Thistle, the other team in the top six. So there's always that chance of teams maybe dropping points along the way. So I think it'll be difficult. I think the kind of the boost in confidence from that point, it kind of just shows you that team. And again, Caitlin Hayes said it immediately after the game. That's a team that, I suppose in the best traditions of Celtic, don't give up. They're not accepting defeat, and just to win or to get the goal in the way they did, there was a real boost. And you could tell that obviously the contrast and the reactions from the players and management, etc. after the game showed you that it was certainly a better point for us. Still a lot of football still to be played, 9 games. So they'll just keep going and keep focusing on just trying to pick up as many points as possible.
That's as you said, this split for the women's team, it's the first year of the split. It's slightly different to what we have in the men's game, where the women's teams will play each other twice, so it's 10 games in total. So as you said, 2 games against Glasgow City still to come, and another against Rangers. That game was away from home yesterday, on Monday evening against Rangers. So if you can win your home games against the top the teams that are going to be in the top three, and if you can at least get a point in the away games, then you're going to be thereabouts right at the end. So it's a massive, massive point for them. In terms of, you mentioned some of the players that impressed you as well in that game. Is there anyone else that kind of stood out for you? I thought Shen Menglu was brilliant down the left-hand side as well.
Yeah, I thought the Rangers found it very difficult to handle her. I thought she just had that initial burst of pace that would take her away from our opponent, and she was very tricky. There was a few times, maybe 2 or 3 times, where she was delivering balls into the box where she was maybe looking for somebody to get on the end of it, that there was no one there. I thought Natalie Ross made a difference when she came on in the second half, just her experience and just anchoring that midfield. Hannah Kerner, I thought, came on to a really good game, and again driving forward, from a right back position. And I thought defensively, the defenders were very good at bringing the ball forward and trying to start attacks. You're playing against, and I think that's where the split, I think, is a good thing in the women's league this year, that particularly with a 3-horse title race, so you're not getting to maybe like the last couple of games, and maybe top is playing, the Glasgow women's team, with all, due respect to them, they haven't won a point this season. So you don't want that to be a game where that could be a game that somebody could win to win the league. You want every game to have real meaning. So I think that the split for the top 6 has certainly got that, because Hearts and Hibs have certainly improved this over a really good season. So I think every game is going to be tough. But yeah, I thought, as I say, I thought I just thought the attitude that they came out. I'm sure the team were disappointed in their own performance in the first half. They just didn't get a foothold in the game, and maybe allowed Rangers too much of the ball into attackers down the flanks. And I thought in the second half we completely negated that and just controlled the game. I felt from the whole way, and you're just thinking we deserve a goal, but as you're watching the clock ticking down, you're thinking we're only running out of time. But Caitlin Hayes steps up with those late heroics.
And what better way than to get a point than by doing it in the last kick of the game? Yeah. What do you think about, for the game in general? It was the first time that the match was shown on Sky Sports. There was all the build up to it. I thought it looked like a healthy enough crowd at the game as well. What do you think that could do for the women's game, getting that exposure on such a sort of big channel like that?
I mean, I think there's two things to be said, and I think obviously, given we don't know what the circumstances of this week are going to go in relation to what happened after the game, with the incident with the Rangers assistant manager, who appeared from the TV pictures as if he had headbutted Fran Alonso, and I thought Fran handled it really well on live TV when he was shown the incident. I thought he was diplomatic. I thought he was concise. He didn't underestimate it. But I thought he handled it absolutely brilliantly. So we don't know what the repercussions of that. I think that's a real shame, because I think the game was part of a weekend of Sky showing. So they'd shown some top games in the women's Super League down in England, and the Rangers, the game against Rangers, was part of that whole, promoting women's football. As you say, it brings the Scottish game to a wider audience. It shows the quality that is here, the quality, the teams, the best teams in the country. And I think it's a real, so I think from that respect, I think it's great. And I think it's great that, Sky are on board and they're going to be showing more games, because I think that's great for the profile of the game. Because I think it just shows, a lot of people maybe haven't seen the games. I think it shows young girls and young women that want to play football, that's role models, but it shows the wider football fans. I think it's a real shame that a lot of the headlines have been taken up by, effectively, misbehaviour of a middle-aged man, and I think that's a real shame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, and I think it's something that we'll wait to see what happens throughout this week, but hopefully, this being the first game that's on Sky, this can start to be a real big moment for women's football going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I thought the presentation, Ellie Barber was hosting it, really good presenter. You had Rachel Corsey, who's the Scotland captain, and Suzanne Grant, as she was then, who used to play for us. So two a current and a former Scotland internationalist who know the game as well. Ian Crocker was the commentator, Julie Fleeton, again one of the great names in Scottish women's football, co-commentating. So, they were taking it seriously. They were showing the proper, I think the pitch wasn't great, and the ball sometimes get lost because I'm not a big fan of artificial surfaces, but I thought overall, it was taken seriously as a game. I mean, there's always that, we've always joked about, you could just put two groups of five-a-side guys and put one set in a Celtic strip and one set in a Rangers strip, and there's always an edge to the game. And that it was really competitive, the game itself, and that's great. But at the end of the game, just about everyone else is quite, shaking hands in a sporting manner as you expect them to do. So, I think it's good that there are going to be more games on TV. I think ultimately that will be positive. But as I say, I think it's a real shame that the main talking point in the immediate aftermath of the game wasn't about the football.
Yeah, 100%. For the women's team, they will now play Partick Thistle at home this Sunday, and as we mentioned, just 9 games left in the season and still plenty to play for. They're still there or thereabouts, so fingers crossed, 3 points on Sunday, and then they can start to look forward to the rest of the games that are coming up. So definitely in a healthy position as things stand at the moment. There was no games obviously for the first team or for the B team over the weekend. They're back in action this weekend, which we're going to get into those matches in just a little moment. But first of all, I think we're going to go off on a little segue with our interview with Victor Wanyama, who sat down with us just last week. He's now obviously over in Montreal Impact. And yeah, he gave us a good 45 minutes of his time chatting about everything from, you'll hear some bits just now about his time with Alonso Johnson and helping him move to Celtic and what he said to him, just about life in Glasgow in general, what he misses, and of course his big moments in the Champions League as well. So yeah, there's lots and lots to get into. He was an amazing person to interview, full of energy, full of character. So you will not want to miss that full interview when it comes out on Thursday evening. But for now, let's give you a little taste of what's to come up in that interview with Victor Wanyama, which comes out on Thursday. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on, and I'm really looking forward to going back through some of your Celtic memories. You're at Montreal just now, but just think back to your time at Celtic. What memories come to mind, Victor?
Oh, a lot of memories, playing at home, those Champions League nights, and also, playing the derby. Lots of memories over there.
Yeah, we can't wait to get through it all. But first of all, Victor, I wanted to ask you about somebody you know very well, who we're now getting to know very well here at Celtic, because Alonso Johnson is a man that joined Celtic from Montreal, and he credited yourself with making the move happen. He called you Agent Victor. Tell us about Alonso Johnson.
Yeah, Alistair, what a player, first of all, and what a man. He's a good guy, very good guy. Beside football, he's a very good human being, and I like him as a person as well. And Ali, he asked me about Celtic, and I told him everything. That's the place to be. And since then, I just couldn't stop telling him about Celtic, so I pushed him there, and I was happy that he made that move to Celtic, and I'm also happy seeing him perform very good every weekend, and yeah, I still support the boys, so I'm happy when the boys do well.
Are you claiming to be his agent now, like he said?
No, when I know when a good player wants to leave, and I know Celtic, they were interested in him, and he had a few options. I will always try to push him to go to Celtic, because Celtic is the perfect club for good players, where they can go and make the fans proud, and also build names for themselves.
Yeah. When I said to Alistair that you were going to be coming on the podcast, and he told me to say hello on his behalf, and he also sent me a question that he wanted me to ask you, where he said, is Babsy going to grow up and be a dominant midfielder like his dad, or is he still focused only on Coco Melon? Could you care to explain that?
I remember this day that I went to Alistair for dinner. Me and my family went to Alistair for dinner. Alistair and his girlfriend, they made some nice dinner, and we went over. So I went over with my son, and my son wanted to watch he loves Cocomelon, so he was watching Cocomelon, and now I can see why he's asked that question. But yeah, he's right. My son, hopefully he can grow to be even better than me.
Yeah, brilliant. So are you still watching Celtic games then? And I take it seeing Alistair play for Celtic?
Yeah, sure. I try to follow every game, and some of them they are very early in the morning, but I still try to watch. And yeah, the boys are doing well. So I told Alistair to go to the gym so that he can be ready to lift a lot of trophies. So he was not used to that. Now he has to get used to it. So he needs more gym to be able to lift the trophies at Celtic.
Yeah, well, you know all about winning trophies at Celtic. So, Victor, let's get into your time at Celtic. Can you take me back to when you signed in 2011? It was from Belgium that you signed for Celtic. What do you remember about the move happening and how the move to Celtic came around?
Yeah, there was. I remember there was like a lot of interest in England and Celtic. So I think that time was I think Birmingham, QPR, and Celtic. So there was when Celtic just came into my mind, I just said no, I want to be there because growing up in Kenya, I used to support Celtic, and there was a team in Kenya called Kibera Celtics, and they used to wear like Celtic, and I used to go watch their games as well, and uh, it was good. So when I heard about Celtic, I said I don't want to hear something else. I just want to move there. So when it happened, I was very very happy, and I couldn't wait to join the team.
So going into the home leg then against Barcelona, take us into what it was like in the changing room the week before the game. What would the manager Neil Lennon be like during that time, and what were the players like as well?
No, Lennon was like just the manager. That time, Lennon was motivating the players so much. He kept telling the players that we have what it takes to beat them, and uh, how we can do it. And we worked hard in set pieces, especially corners. And we had like in Magru, we had like a good set piece taker, and Lennon was taking these set pieces to, kill the to kill the game. So whenever we had a corner, it was like a half chance. So we executed really well, and well, we had some decent chances when you had set piece.
So was that always a plan in training that week that if we get a corner, it's going to go to your head at the back post?
We had a lot of variation, so the manager had a lot in mind, and we did work it. That set piece was a training, was it like a proper training set piece that we did we worked on it in training, and during the game it worked out for us.
I mean, Victor, it's one thing training to get the set piece, but it's another thing against that Barcelona team to have the ball to win a set piece as well. So what were the tactics like during the week to get you prepared for that game, to actually try and stop them from scoring and to have an influence on the ball?
It was just, to like, defend together, stay compact, defend together, attack together, run for one another, and we did that. We knew also we won't be seeing a lot of the ball, so we had to like stay compact and defend and try to get counter as well.
Were you given a role by the manager to man mark Iniesta or Xavi or Messi?
No, we just had to stay compact because that Barcelona team was great, and by just trying to stay compact and maybe try to run for each other. Whatever your teammate cannot cover, you try and cover for them, and it worked quite well.
Let's get to the actual game now. So before it, it's a massive celebration for Celtic. 125th anniversary. There was so much on the match as well. Of course, the stadium was full with a big display going on. When you were in that changing room beforehand, did Neil Lennon have a motivational speech for you? Did he have anything planned to get you up for the game?
Yeah, he told us, he told us like, look at the crowd out there, we are at home. We shouldn't forget that the first leg. We have to remember the first leg. We were a bit short, but we give everything. So tonight we have to give everything, and we need to come back in this dressing room smiling and getting the maximum points will be good. To give us the edge to be in the next stage of Champions League. So that was all about him like talking to us. So
what do you remember about then walking out the tunnel and seeing the stadium with the whole display?
I remember walking out of the stadium, and I couldn't hear anything. It was just loud. It was loud, and everybody was up on his feet, Nobody was sitting, and it was just unbelievable atmosphere.
So then the game begins. Barcelona have lots of possession, but we get the corner that you've all been working on in training all week. The ball comes into the back post, and there you are to head it in. Describe what that moment was like and how you felt.
Oh my days. So yeah, as I said, Charlie just crossed the ball perfectly on the back post, and I raise up. I go above Daniel Alves to score the goal. And I was trying to run on the corner where the 67th supporters they are, and I looked up and I saw like the stadium, literally the people are coming down like they're gonna fall on the pitch, and I changed direction and go back on the back of the goal. So it was a great moment, and seeing that was just amazing. Like the crowd went crazy.
Is that one of your favourite goals in your career?
I would say so because we were like one of the teams. Only us and Madrid managed to beat Barcelona that season, and to score against them with that team that they dominated Europe was even great.
So then tell us what it's like for the rest of that match, because I was there and I can remember just constantly looking at the clock and seeing time move so slowly as Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, David Villa all passed the ball to one another. What was it like to play against those players? Was it the hardest job in the world in that midfield?
It was so hard because we were just trying to like see out the game, defend, and that day we trying to stop them, but they just keep on coming. But also we had the Foster there saving everything as well. He had a big night also, and while we were defending, trying to see out the game, Tony just uh, finished the game. So after that goal, we were pretty sure we could hang on and get something out of that.
When Tony Watt scored, or when you saw him going through and goal, first of all, what were you thinking? And then when he scores, is that the loudest you've ever heard a stadium go in your life?
Exactly. When I saw Tony running like on the side, 1v1 and with the Mascherano, and he just moved the ball when he was about to shoot. I was thinking like, oh, let it go in. And then when it was in, everybody, like, we were very tired, but everybody sprint like crazy to go and celebrate. So when he scored, we were really, we were really happy, and we just had to go back and stay behind and try see the game out now.
Yes, there we have it. Just a little snippet there with Victor, and again, you can catch the full thing on Thursday. What you don't see in that, Paul, which I'm going to mention just now, is that there's a point in the interview where Victor's phone, I can't remember if his phone died or it disconnected, whatever it was, and I was sitting here, I didn't know what happened. A bit of time passed, and I then started to think, okay, he must have hung up. I don't know what happened here. So I start to pack up, and then I get a text from him saying, "Oh, I'm ready to come back on." I was like, right, okay, that's fine. And it was literally just the last bit of the interview, like 5 minutes at the end, when we were doing like some quick fire questions that we had left to do. And then by the time he came back on, he'd completely changed his outfit and was in a completely different location. So if anyone is watching it on Thursday and does have a little moment to yourself where you're looking at it and think, hold on a minute, that's completely different, then that is the reasoning for it. It still makes me laugh every time I get to that bit and I see it.
I mean, obviously Alistair Johnson calls him Agent Victor, but I think these things, you know, the one we did a couple of weeks ago with Ross Wallace, and we're hearing from guys that we remember what they did for Celtic. We probably haven't heard from them for such a long time, so I think it's great that you're getting that trip down memory lane, and it's clear every time when you're talking to them how much they loved being here, because probably for most of them this is the biggest club they've ever played at, on the biggest stage, and achieved the most. So you can tell that there's real affection for the club.
Particularly someone like Victor, who then he obviously goes on and plays at Tottenham. I chatted to him very briefly about that, about he was part of the team that reached the Champions League final, and he was like, yeah, it was good, but Celtic. And that was his answer for everything. It was like Celtic, Celtic, Celtic.
Which is great to hear as a fan. So
100%. And there's some more really good nuggets of that you'll hear in it about his love for some things that he had in Glasgow. Pasta, one of them is spaghetti. How much he misses haggis as well. So there's some brilliant little bits in it. So definitely stay tuned for that on Thursday. It's one not.
I'm sure they still have pasta in Montreal.
I know, but he said, because that was obviously his tweet when he was at the club, when he said, "I like spaghetti," or whatever it was. So I asked him about it, and it was just kind of like tongue in cheek. I thought he probably gets asked this all the time, and he's like, "No, honestly, like I went out for pasta and I went for spaghetti at this place, and it was amazing. Like, it's like anytime if I ever come back to Glasgow, I need to go to this place." He can't remember what the name of it was. And it was funny because he said, "Oh, it was somewhere like in downtown." I was like, "You've been in Canada too long, you don't say downtown here." So yeah, no, he absolutely, it's like his favourite pasta ever, this one in Glasgow, so I don't know. But yeah, and he said he'll miss his haggis more than anything else, so a man of good taste. Let's look ahead to the first team then, and Alistair Johnson's team, which are playing Ross County away this Sunday, the first game back from the international break. And after this, it's just going to be week after week until the end of the season. It's a really important game, this one, isn't it? Away to Ross County, somewhere that we've got some good memories of in recent times, but particularly, I know we don't want to look ahead too much, but we know that the game after that is the Glasgow Derby as well, so just really important that we pick up 3 points in this. Yeah,
and it can be a venue where it can be a wee bit tricky. I mean, people remember last season, Anthony Ralston's last gasp winner. So it's quite a tight wee ground, and you know they can be quite physical, and they do, you know, they give you a game. So, but I think it's like every game, we say it every game, if we turn up and we play, then we should win. I think it's worth mentioning as well, just obviously the international who've been on. Callum McGregor, you know, got his 50th cap at the weekend. Should be getting number 51 against Spain tonight. But I mean, I think that's an incredible achievement, just another incredible milestone in his career.
Yeah, well, that'll be him now into the Hall of Fame, isn't it, in Scotland, as soon as you reach 50 caps. So it's incredible, just incredible consistency. A guy that since Brendan Rodgers came in, he seems to play about 65 games a season, doesn't he? And he just shows that again with Scotland. I mean, I suppose that's the thing going into the game against Ross County. You just got to touch wood that there's no more injuries between now and then. I know there's been some sweats over some players during the international break, so fingers crossed we just kind of get through this injury free.
Yeah, but that's where I suppose that's where the strength of the squad comes in. That, you know, we've seen that with the bench that we've got. You know, if you lose one or two players, you know, you can call other players in, and as you say, that, you know, they'll only be looking at the next game, but I suppose you're planning as well for the game after that, which is a massive game.
In terms of Ross County and the potential threats that they may pose, I think they've been in better form of the last couple of months. They really lost a lot of firepower during the summer with Regan Charles Cook going and Joseph Hungbo. And in January, Malcolm Mackay's managed to get in a couple more strikers. Eamon Brophy's come in, Simon Murray's come in, one other as well, which the name has just escaped me. And they've also got Jordan White, and they've started to get in the score sheet. So I think now when we're playing them compared to earlier in the season, they're probably going to be in a little bit of a stronger position, which might make it a little bit more tricky.
I mean, I've always thought Eamon Brophy's a really good striker. I mean, I don't know whether, I'm not really sure whether he's been unlucky with injuries or just doesn't have that consistency, but I just always felt wherever he's played, he's scored goals, and he's been getting amongst the goals. I think he scored on his debut actually up at Ross County. So he's probably a goal threat, and he's scored against us before, with various clubs that he's played for. And that might be the difference for them, maybe not on Sunday, but having players like that might be the difference, when it comes to the split in there in the bottom six, avoiding either the relegation or playoff spot.
100%. Now, let's get into this, Paul. Was it being the international break, or we're just coming to the end of it, we thought it'd be an idea of naming our 1 to 11 Celtic starting lineup, but every position has to be a different nationality in honour of the international break, if we want to say in honour of it. So we came up with this idea yesterday, and I think since then the two of us have really been scratching our heads over players to add.
No, you have to tell the truth. I've been sitting in the office cursing you for making me go through this.
It's one of those things, you start to think about it and you think, okay, I'll get there, and then all of a sudden a name pops into your head, and then you're scribbling it out, and then you're just constantly going back and forth between certain players. So it's been a challenge, hasn't it?
Well, the main difficulty, I mean, there's certain players that, probably both of us, the first name you put on is Henrik. So that's your Swedish player. But then I think I found the difficulty was if you're only allowed one Scottish player, because obviously the majority of the players that have played for Celtic are Scottish, and there's just, there's, off the top of my head, you can think of half a dozen that you would think, right. And we've tried to do it in players that maybe we've seen, so you're not going back to Jimmy McGrory or players like that. So that was the challenge of it, and trying to just pick who's the one Scottish player that you're going to pick. And
yeah, so that's the rules of it. We're taking it from basically players that we've watched. So for me, I'm taking it really from Seville. That's kind of the first team I remember, the end of that onwards. So that instantly, as much as I feel like I kind of know, know about Lubo, I'm not having him in my team because he left 2002, didn't he? End of 2002.
But you're squeezing Henrik in. I suppose he was 2000.
Yeah. I do remember Henrik. I do remember going to games and seeing him. So he'll definitely have a place in it. But we don't know each other's teams, and again, you can only have a nationality once in your side. So let's start off. We're both playing a 4-4-2.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my 4-4-2. I think it would probably lose the battle of midfield, but
okay.
Aye.
So we start off in goals. So I've gone with that one. It was really a toss-up for me between Artur Boruc and Fraser Forster, but I've went for Artur Boruc for that one.
I originally went for Artur Boruc, but there's a reason why I haven't, which will become apparent. Okay. So I actually went for, so for me it was a toss-up between Joe Hart and Fraser Forster, and then I just decided, since Joe's here, I thought I'd better choose it. So I went so that would be my English player, and the team would be Joe Hart. Okay,
so that rules out any more English players going forward then?
Yeah.
Right backs, this was a tough one for me because, clearly, it's not giving anything away. Henrik will be in the side.
But he never played right back. But.
No, but that means that initially I would have thought Mikael Lustig. So I couldn't have him in. So then I'm tossing up. I love Alistair Johnston as a player, but he's obviously maybe just not been here long enough. Juranovic I enjoyed as well, but I've went with Didier Ragat at right back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good choice actually. Well, this was the part of the problem for me, because if I was looking at the best players I'd seen, there'd be a predominance of Scottish players, particularly in midfield. So you'd have likes of Paul McStay, for me Callum McGregor, and then you go over on the left, and the left back was another problem, because probably the best left backs I can think of came back for me, Tosh McKinlay, you've, in more recent times, Kieran Tierney and Greg Taylor, but I had to have Danny McGrain And for me, just the best right back. He was the best right back in the world at the time, and could have played left back. I mean, he did play left back for Scotland as well. But Danny's my Scottish player. He's just he was just phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, it was always remembers in Pele's like greatest 100 players of all time or something as well, wasn't it? At one point. So that's definitely one player, Danny McGrain, that I would have loved to have seen. Him, Paul McStay, Tommy Burns, and obviously then the Lions, but excluding them, everyone just talks about Danny McGrain being such an amazing player, so that's one I definitely would have liked to see. Okay, so Danny McGrain for you, and then let's do left back, and then we'll go into centre halves. So the left back is where, I couldn't, there wasn't that many. As I say, the best left backs, so maybe if we come back in the 80s, or the early 90s, Tosh McKinlay. I remember watching Celtic in the 80s, and we used to always say we should have signed Tosh McKinlay. I remember he played for Dundee or for Hearts. Brilliant left back, and I was glad that Tommy Burns brought him to Celtic. As I say, more recently, the likes of Kieran Tierney, and I think Greg Taylor is phenomenal. But then I came up with Darius Dovcik, who had played, and he could play left back, he could play in the left of a three. Mm-hmm. He was another player. He maybe didn't get the headlines that Jakinowski got because he was more kind of flamboyant, scored the goals, could do phenomenal things, and then obviously made a lot of headlines off the pitch as well. But Dovcik was a really cool and quite stylish player. So putting him in at left back then means that I can't put Arthur in. So that's why. But so Darius Dovcik is my left back. Scored in a derby match as well, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He had a great free kick on him as well. Yeah. Great, really, really good left foot.
Yeah, good shout. So my left back. So again, the same decisions I was having as yourself. And I was looking at Greg Taylor, Kieran Tierney, but I want to leave my Scottish player for a different position. So I've went for Izagiri in that position, get a Honduras name in. It obviously was at Celtic for such a long time, such an amazing servant to the club, particularly though his first 2 years he was absolutely sensational, and then he broke his leg up at Pittodrie, and then after that it just wasn't quite the same. But
I always felt really, because he'd been player of the year the previous season, I always felt really sorry for him for that. But I mean, he still, he was another one of these players that came, and what I liked about him is he embraced everything about Celtic. I always when he used to go up to Lennoxtown, and he would come along, and he was just a lovely guy. He would say hello to everybody, but he would come up and you'd be sitting there working, and he'd come up and do the fist pump, and I'm like, I'm a middle-aged guy, just shake my hand. But I had to do it.
But now fist pumps are all the rage after all everything COVID, and everyone's doing them.
Yeah, so no, I think that's a good choice as well.
Yeah. So. Okay, centre halves.
I think we might concur with this.
Yeah, Virgil van Dijk. Is he in for you?
Yeah.
And then my second centre half, I'm going with Cameron Carter-Vickers.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think he's a different kind of player to Virgil, but he reminds me, we watched Virgil and it was effortless, and you knew that he was going to the very, he was going to go and play at the highest level. And I look at Cameron Carter-Vickers, and I think it's the same thing. I think he's a phenomenal player, absolutely phenomenal. And I think, I think he's in the best place. I think he made the right career move rather than he'd been on loan. I think he knows he's in the right place, and he's playing at a really high level. But I think he's phenomenal as well. So I think that's a really strong defensive partnership.
We might have some debates then as we go forward in midfield and up front. So let's start off with our wingers. Have you kind of got wingers, or are they?
I don't know. I just chose 4 midfielders.
Right, why don't you just name your 4 midfielders then, and I'll do mine.
So the midfielders, there's one midfielder that actually would anchor things. The rest of them are all playing playground football. Charging forward is Neil Lennon, so he'd be my Irishman. I do think that there was a period in the early 2000s where genuinely I thought Neil Lennon was one of the best defensive midfielders in Europe. I thought he was, he did he allowed the other players to maybe be more creative, but Gordon Strachan used to always talk about people being a good teammate because they were always there, always prepared to take the ball even under pressure. Neil Lennon was exceptional at that, so he would be anchoring my midfield, and the other 3 would be Hatate, would be just for that, you know, the creativity and the engine, and then I have to have Lubo, because Lubo's just, it was a joy. And the other one would be Tom Rogic, because again, what he could do with a ball, and I think especially when people would see him, probably, I think what took him by surprise, he's quite a tall guy, but he just glided through, it was effortless, and the ball was stuck to his feet, and it just took my breath away, what he could do with the ball. And I thought he was a brilliant player, so that would be my 4, ostensibly, midfielders.
Were you debating, was there any other names that you kind of maybe wanted to get in?
Well, Stilian Petrov would have been there or thereabouts as well. I think there was a period where, you know, going up and down that park, he was phenomenal. Ideally, the main debate for me was, as a Scottish player, was either Danny McGrain or Paul McStay, because Paul, you know, if it was just a general 11, Paul McStay would be in there every day of the week. But then I just wanted Danny in the team, so that was the difficulty.
That is where it gets difficult. I mean, for me, I think if I had clear memories of going to the games and watching Lubo, then he would definitely be my team, but he's not. So for me, I've went for Nakamura. I think he's my favourite player at that age. In the left, I went for Aidan McGeady. So he's my Irishman in there. Again, I just thought he was an unbelievable talent. Like, even just from the moment that he came into the team, I remember he played in the Champions League against AC Milan here, back 8 AC Milan team, and he was absolutely phenomenal at that teenage years. And yeah, he's in. And then in my midfield 2, so I've gone with Petrov. And then the second one was one I was debating over. So this is what I was leaving as my Scots player. And I really could not decide. And I think if I'm going to say one now, but then you could ask me next week and I'll say something different. I really wanted to have Paul Lambert in, but I don't know if when I remember watching games, did I see the best of Paul Lambert? So I've decided not to put him in for that reason, because I maybe only caught the last couple of years of his career. But you know that there was probably a time where he genuinely was a world-class midfielder and one of the best in Europe. So then I was debating over our current captain, Callum McGregor, or a captain before that, Scott Brown. And I've just decided to go with Callum McGregor. And then again, it's nothing against Scott Brown at all, because of what he achieved at this club, how good he was as a player. I think it's actually underrated how good Scott Brown was as a footballer, particularly, you remember his last year under Ronnie, and people were worried, does he have the legs anymore? Is he going to last much longer? And Brendan came in, and all of a sudden Scott became this complete new player, and you would see the stats of him in the Champions League. He'd have like the highest pass accuracy and all this different types. So another outstanding player, but I've just went with Callum on that one. I think he's a player that currently, or at any point over the last 5-6 years, could easily just walk into a top 4 team in England and fit in perfectly. We spoke about him with Scotland, and I think that we're lucky that we've got him, really, at this moment in time. We're lucky that he's a Celtic fan. He wants to just stay at this club and win things for this club and skipper this club, and he's incredible. And also, if he's watching, it means that if I him again, then hopefully that helps.
Well, I'm hoping he forgives me for choosing Danny McGrain.
2 strong midfields. And then up front, so I take it we both went for Henrik Larsson, so that leaves one other spot.
So I was having a debate over this. So it's basically a toss-up between George Cadet or John Hartson.
Okay.
In terms of, because obviously, the temptation was to have the Larsson-Sutton partnership, but I've already used my Englishman in goals. So I would probably go with Cadet, just because I think, again, I think we maybe didn't get as much out of him as we should have, but I thought as a goal scorer, I thought he was phenomenal when he came, and you know, you can maybe see why there was reasons to obstruct his signing, because, you know, people elsewhere saw how beneficial it would be to us. to their detriment, of course. But I think it's a shame that we didn't get the longevity out of him. But I thought as a finisher, I thought he was phenomenal. Although, John Hartson, again, as a balance maybe with Henrik and John Hartson. And I've always said, when I've interviewed John Hartson, I always felt, there was a few things in terms of Seville, John didn't play that game because he'd obviously done his back in. I always felt if he'd been there, even if he hadn't started or come on, we'd have won. They'd just given us something different up front, and he was a big game player.
Mm-hmm. I was listening to an interview recently with, it was Rio Ferdinand, it was Rio Ferdinand, and he was talking about his early days at West Ham and coming through, and they were asking him who were the best players there, and obviously they had a brilliant crop of youngsters, and Joe Cole and Michael Carrick and Frank Lampard and all the likes. And he's like, honestly, the best player at the time was John Hartson at training. He's like, I've never seen a striker like him and what he could do, and he would just bully people and throw them about, and he knew how to score, and he said it was just absolutely brilliant, and it kind of took people by surprise a little bit. But for us, we got to see some of the best of him up here as well. And even that last year with John Hartson, when Gordon Strachan came in 05-06 season, and John was probably at the twilight of his career then, and he was still the top goal scorer in the league that year, wasn't he?
Scored the winning goal.
Against
league,
Hearts, yeah. So yeah, another one.
I might change my mind then.
Actually, well, could I remind people about him that maybe didn't get the chance to see him, because was it 95 or 96 he signed, and there was a lot of excitement from Celtic fans when he was coming in, this guy with a big reputation. You mentioned about blocking his signing as well.
Delaying, yeah. So, which again was to the credit of Fergus of pursuing that, because it was obviously not an administrative mix-up. So basically Jim Farry, who was head of SFA, lost his job as a result of that, because they were doing a delay in registering George Cadet. But also famously, I think we played Aberdeen here, and when he scored, the roar actually knocked the Radio 5 live broadcast off air. But he was so quick, and he was just one of these natural born goal scorers. He just knew where the goal was, and as I say, I think he was part of the three amigos, and we maybe we saw flashes of the brilliance, but didn't see enough of it, because I don't know if at the time they were using Celtic as a stepping stone. But really good goal scorer.
George Cadet is someone that's always ingrained in our family, because my sister's a couple of years older and I was born in 93, and my dad used to come home from games and he would always sing there's only one George Cadet, to the point where my sister at that age then was really kind of developing how to talk and things like that, and she'd sing it back to him. So we always say that anytime we see George Cadet doing something or a video comes up, we'll send it to each other, and then she'll always give us a rendition of it. So you're going with Cadet?
I think I'll just stick with that.
So for me, my debate was around, so again, Hartson, Sutton, and then the two Frenchmen as well, Dembele and Edouard, who have given us some really good memories of late. But then I thought I couldn't pick one of them actually, because I then went for Didier Agathe. But also picking between the two of them is really difficult, because they both have kind of similar records, but they're both completely different players as well.
It's why you can see the season that Musa left. There was only a couple of games that Brendan Rodgers, his intention was to play the two of them up front, with Musa leading the line and Edouard doing what he did best, was just playing off him. And it's one of those great what ifs. If Musa had stayed for the season, that would have been a phenomenal strike force, because as I say, Edouard, I think he would have really benefited from that, but obviously it wasn't to be.
So with this, though, I've decided to go for Chris Sutton, and the reason I'm doing that is because if Henrik's my other striker, and if you ask Henrik who's your favourite strike partner, he will say Chris Sutton. So I am bowing down to the king on this one. If whatever Henrik wants, Henrik can have in my team. So yeah, that's my team. Boric, Agathe, Virgil, Carter Vickers, Izagiri, Nakamura, Petrov, McGregor, McGeady, Sutton and Larsson. If my team was to play against your team, what would you think?
There'd be a lot of goals.
I mean, your midfield four. Neil Lennon's got a lot of running.
I was going to say Neil Lennon's, he's got a lot of work defensively, and Hatate would have to do a lot of the running and just give the ball to Rogic and Lebo and let them work their magic.
It'd be an entertaining game though.
Yeah. Maybe that's the next year's Legends game.
It could well be. I know, get the two of them against one another. Although I don't know if Aidan McKeedy against Danny McGrain would be fair at this current age. Although Danny McGrain's probably still one of the fittest people at Celtic Park. Yeah, well, I'm sure if we'd done that again next week, we'd have a few different opinions. But if you have your say, if you disagree with any of our choices, or you want to have your own say in your 1 to 11, then put them in the comments below, and we'll have a look to see what you all think. It's quite a worthwhile exercise. It's quite a fun afternoon for us to do. Right, Paul, let's move on then. Let's look ahead to the B team. They didn't have a game at the weekend there, but they have their own Glasgow derby coming up this weekend as well. They're currently 2 points behind Rangers in second place. Celtic are in third. Spartans are top of the league at the moment. There's only 5 games left as well, so this is the crunch part of the season. You can't get away from it. Yeah,
and I think was it 5-1 that we beat them here? I think they'll certainly be 5-2. All right, I was trying to take a goal off them there. Yeah, I think there'll be a real edge to it, because obviously Rangers will be looking for sort of measure of revenge. I think the team's been playing really well. I think, obviously Mackenzie Carr signing a new deal to extend his stay here. I think that's great. He's one of the really promising young players coming through the B team just now, so that's great that he's committed his future. And some of the other boys that have, Ben Summers in and around the first team, some of the boys getting representation for the international under 21s, etc. So I think there's real confidence there. I think it's great that they're playing on a big stage, in the big stadium. I'm not sure in terms of, I don't know if there's a crowd or whether it's behind closed doors, but I think it's just playing at that stage, and given how well they performed here at Celtic Park, they have to go in feeling confident.
But that's another aspect of this season that we've spoken about, and all the different types of football that they've had in Europe against opposition in England, in the Lowland League, and then having the chance to play at Celtic Park. They're now going to be playing at Ibrox as well. They've got not the B team, but there's a Youth Cup final coming up as well, which will be at Hampden for some of the players that are a little bit younger. And that's what you want at that age, isn't it? To be playing in the biggest stadiums and stages. The
other thing as well is, given the fact that the league season's nearly over, the Youth Cup is obviously for the younger players, and then we're still in the Glasgow Cup, so we're playing a Glasgow Cup final. But games like the weekend's game are chances for the young players to show what they can do, because even though their season might be over, they'll still be in and around Lennoxtown. And I'm sure, given the fact that some of them have already been training in the first team this season, we've seen brief glimpses of them in the first team, then they'll be wanting to show that, can they then stay and train with the first team for the remainder of the season. So games like that, if they can show what they can do, that obviously catches the attention of the manager and the coaching staff.
Yeah, 100%. Paul, that leads us on to our predictions game to finish things off. So again, we've got 7 fixtures from our Premiership in England, and obviously all the 3 Celtic teams as well. And you're still out on top at the moment, as I'm sure you'll be happy to know. This week we've got Jennifer Smith on to play for you, the fans. I'm still in third place, the fans are in second place as well, so I still have catching up to do, and the games are quickly running out. So let's rattle through some of these then. So start off with the English Premier League on Saturday at lunchtime, which is Man City against Liverpool.
I think you'd have to go Man City, particularly at home. So I'll go for 2-0 to Manchester City.
2-0. That is the same as what Jen has gone for, and I've went for 3-1 for Manchester City in that one. And now a couple from our own Premiership in Scotland. Hibs against Motherwell.
I think that will be 3-2 to Hibs.
Ooh, 3-2. That'd be
a thriller. 5-goal thriller at Easter Road. Probably be 0-0.
Yeah, probably. Jen has went for 1 each in that one, and I've gone for 2-0 to Hibs in that. Another game in Scotland, Kilmarnock at home to Hearts. It's a tricky one.
Can you hope that both teams lose?
I'm sure you can.
That's got a draw written all over it. I'm
Yeah.
going to go for a 2-2 draw,
Yeah.
and it's actually a competition to see which of the two managers looks the most miserable at all times. But
The post-match press conferences after that are just going to be
aye.
one big moan, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. 2 each with 4 controversial goals, so it gives them plenty to moan about.
But I mean, yeah, I've also gone for a draw and 1 each in that one, and Jen's went for 2-0 Hearts. One other game in England, which is on Sunday, is Newcastle against Man United.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Because Newcastle started winning again.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think, and they've probably had too many draws. I think I'm going to go for 1 each with that one.
Okay, yeah. I'm pipping Newcastle just 1-0, as you mentioned. They're starting to win again. Man, you've got Casemiro out, and I think they've got a couple of injuries during international break as well. And James went for 1-0 Man United, so we've all went for something different there. The B team away to Rangers.
We have to go for a Celtic win. 2-1 to Celtic.
2-1. I've went for exactly the same. 2-1 as well. Jen's went for 3-2, so we're confident all round. Then the women at home against Partick Thistle.
I'm going to go for 5-0 to Celtic.
Jen's went for 3-0, I've went for 4-0. So we've got all bases covered after 3-0 there. And then finally, Sunday, 12 o'clock, Celtic away at Ross County.
Right. Going to go for 4-1 to Celtic.
Oh, that was the same scoreline as in the League Cup there earlier this season. If that's something you put some thought behind, or you just put a number.
The reason I'm doing so well is I don't put any thought behind it. You should know that by now.
James went for 3-0, and I've gone for 2-0 in that one. But if we come back next week and we've got...
See, I'm kind of factoring in the dodgy VAR penalty into these predictions.
Of course,
so.
yeah. You know, maybe that's the reason why I'm not doing so well, because I keep forgetting that we need to still beat the VAR as well. But yeah, if we've got 3 wins to talk about next week, then that'll be
excellent.
That'll be happy leading into another derby. Yeah, thanks very much for joining us again. Thank you very much for listening, and yeah, have a go at your international lovings. We'd love to hear from them, and stay tuned on Thursday for the big interview with Victor Wanyama. You do not want to miss that. And yeah, make sure you subscribe and like to Celtic View Podcast on all of your podcast channels. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. So you've always got a chance to listen to us. But for now, enjoy the weekend's action and do join us again next week. Hail, hail.